1. How Trump's tariffs are hitting your wallet, Fed report reveals price hikes. 2. U.S. economic outlook, rising activity amid pessimism and tariff pressures. 3. How tariffs are impacting business prices. 1. How Trump's tariffs are hitting your wallet, Fed report reveals price hikes. Imagine opening your wallet and seeing your hard-earned dollars vanish into thin air. Sounds scary, right? Well, that's exactly what's happening as businesses pass the buck on tariffs to consumers. But here's where it gets controversial. A recent Federal Reserve survey, https://www.independent.co.uk/news/Federal-Reserve-P-2788735.html, has uncovered that President Trump's sweeping tariffs are already hitting consumers hard. Businesses across the U.S. are reporting soaring costs related to tariffs, particularly when it comes to raw materials, according to the report, https://www.federalreserve.gov/monetary-policy/files/beigebook_20250716.pdf. What's the result? Many companies are passing at least a portion of these increased costs onto their customers. But some business owners are holding back on price hikes, aware that consumers are becoming more price sensitive. The catch? They are suffering lower profits as a result. The Federal Reserve, our country's central bank, is tasked with setting interest rates and regulating markets. They've been surveying economic conditions 8 times a year. Their findings predict that consumer prices will rise more rapidly by late summer. But here's the twist: despite the tariffs, White House spokesperson Kush Desai claims that imported goods have actually fallen this year. This is based on a report from the Council of Economic Advisers, https://www.whitehouse.gov. content uploads. Imported goods have been getting cheaper relative to domestically produced goods PDF. The administration maintains that the cost of tariffs will be shouldered by foreign exporters who rely on the American market. However, this narrative is being challenged by economists. The JPMorganChase Institute estimates that Trump's tariffs could add a staggering $82.3 billion in new costs to mid-sized U.S. companies. https://www.independent.co.uk/news/trump-tariffs-costs-analysis-B2781268.html. Retailers, in particular, are expected to pass these rising costs onto consumers. Goldman Sachs predicts that U.S. companies will pass on 60% of their tariff costs to consumers. Trump's flurry of tariffs, dubbed Liberation Day on April 2, included a general 10% tariff on all goods entering the U.S. While some tariffs have been temporarily paused until August 1, negotiations continue. However, tariffs on specific goods, like cars from China, 25%, and tomatoes from Mexico, 17%, remain in effect. Trump's tariffs have sparked skepticism among his own voters. A June poll by Politico and Public First found that only half of Trump voters believe his tariffs against Chinese goods will benefit the U.S. https://www.independent.co.uk/news/world/americas/trump-tariffs-poll-us-politics/Trump-politics/P2787994.html. Despite concerns, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt insists that Trump's tariffs are not inflationary but instead a source of massive revenue. However, this narrative clashes with the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's claim that he would have cut interest rates if not for Trump's tariffs. The tension between the president and Powell has escalated, with Trump dubbing him Mr. Too Late and even polling Republican lawmakers about firing Powell. While Trump later said it's highly unlikely, the question remains, will he take this drastic step? Controversial question. What do you think? Are Trump's tariffs a necessary move to protect American interests, or are they just passing the buck to consumers? Share your thoughts in the comments. 2. U.S. economic outlook, rising activity amid pessimism and tariff pressures. Here's the economic paradox puzzling everyone: the U.S. economy is growing while business confidence is crumbling. According to the Federal Reserve's latest Beige Book report, economic activity actually increased in recent weeks, but here's the twist fueling widespread concern. Businesses across America describe their outlook as neutral to slightly pessimistic. Why this disconnect? The Fed's comprehensive survey reveals two major culprits: escalating trade tensions and a shrinking labor pool. The Beige Book, a compilation of real-world anecdotes gathered from businesses nationwide, showed tariffs are hammering companies from all angles. Picture this: a metal fabricator in Minneapolis sees stable orders now but warns of an ominous volume cliff ahead. An Atlanta business raised prices preemptively before tariffs hit, while others are squeezing profit margins by delaying price hikes until trade policies become clearer. But here's where it gets controversial: while tariffs dominate headlines, the silent crisis of vanishing immigrant labor is equally damaging. Construction crews can't finish projects, landscapers turn away over half their customers, and seasonal businesses are shutting down entirely because they can't find workers, a direct consequence of tightened immigration policies. Employment saw minimal growth, but uncertainty has frozen hiring plans. Many companies are postponing major staffing decisions, creating a dangerous limbo for workers. As LPL Financial's Jeffrey Roach warns, we should watch for margin compression at businesses, rising loan delinquencies, and a sluggish housing market. Now, the million-dollar question: will the Fed cut interest rates soon? The central bank has held rates at 4.25% to 4.50% since December, and most analysts predict no change until at least September. But this is where opinions explode. A few Fed officials argue for immediate rate cuts at July's meeting to support the labor market. However, and this is the part most people miss, the majority fear cutting rates could backfire. Why? Because tariffs are already pushing consumer prices up. June saw the steepest inflation jump in 5 months for imported goods like clothing and furniture. If rates drop while tariffs fuel inflation, the Fed could undo years of progress on price stability. The plot thickens with President Trump's public feud with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Trump demands immediate rate cuts and even hinted at firing Powell, though he later backtracked. Meanwhile, Fed leaders passionately disagree on the tariff impact. Dallas Fed President Loy Logan predicts inflation surges won't hit until fall, while Boston's Susan Collins suspects effects may be milder than feared. So here's what demands your perspective: should the Fed prioritize fighting potential inflation from tariffs or jumpstart growth with rate cuts? And how badly is the immigrant labor shortage hurting your community? Share your take, agree or disagree, in the comments below. The Fed is listening to stories like those in the Beige Book, and your voice matters in this high-stakes economic debate. 3. How tariffs are impacting business prices. The latest news in the business world is sparking heated debates, and it's time to dive into the controversy. Here's the big story: businesses are raising prices due to tariffs, and it's affecting consumers across the country. According to the Federal Reserve's July Beige Book, an anecdotal survey of domestic economic conditions, many firms are passing on at least a portion of cost increases to consumers through price hikes or surcharges. This move is a direct result of the higher costs imposed by tariffs, which are having a ripple effect on the economy. But here's where it gets interesting: not all businesses are raising prices. Those that aren't are seeing restricted profit margins, thanks to consumers' growing price sensitivity. Inflation is on the rise, and it's partly due to the tariffs. The Labor Department's Consumer Price Index jumped in June, and import prices are advancing, albeit at a slower pace than expected. The numbers are below economists' expectations, but they still reflect the impact of tariffs on the economy. The Trump administration has instituted a 10% general tariff, along with China-specific tariffs and targeted tariffs on individual goods. But the country-specific reciprocal tariffs have been paused until August 1st as trade negotiations continue. So, what does this mean for consumers? It means that prices are going up, and it's not just a matter of businesses trying to make a quick buck. The tariffs are having a real impact on the economy, and it's affecting the prices of goods and services. But here's the thing: not everyone agrees that tariffs are the answer. Some argue that they are a necessary measure to protect American industries, while others claim that they are a form of protectionism that will ultimately harm the economy. And this is the part most people miss: the impact of tariffs on businesses and consumers is complex, and it's not just a matter of raising prices. It's about the long-term effects on the economy and how we navigate the changing landscape of international trade. So, what do you think? Are tariffs the answer to protecting American industries, or are they a recipe for disaster? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, Meta investors and Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg settled an $8 billion lawsuit with shareholders on Thursday. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican Alaska, on Thursday said she thinks White House Budget Chief Russell Vought disrespects Congress's annual funding process after he said it should be less bipartisan. Median weekly wages for full-time and salaried workers in the U.S. rose nearly 5% from last year, according to the latest report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Trump administration plans to put solar and wind projects through an elevated review process, saying that moves toward approval will have to be vetted by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum's office. And finally, Americans are holding off on retirement over money concerns, and new study finds. The S&P 500 rose to a new closing record, boosted by solid earnings and U.S. economic data. U.S. retail sales bounced around in a whipsaw trade environment. You're all caught up. See you tomorrow. The latest in politics and policy. Direct to your inbox. Sign up for the Business and Economy newsletter. Tax, Beige Book, Donald Trump, Doug Burgum, Lisa Murkowski, Mark Zuckerberg, Russell Vought, Tariffs, The Federation Copyright 2025 Nexstar Media Incorporated. All rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, rewritten, or redistributed.